Hi everyone, welcome to the latest in our LinkedIn Live Leadership Conversations. My name is Barry Winkus. I am CSO of CPL and head of the Future of Work Institute. I'm delighted today to be joined by Stephen Hollins, Software Engineering Group Director and Site Director of Cadence Design Systems. Stephen, welcome. Really nice to see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Barry.
Stephen, I'd like to start really by talking a bit about Cadence. So really fascinating company, the more I've got to know about you guys, doing some leading edge innovative work with many of the biggest of organizations around the world. Can you tell us a little bit about Cadence, a bit about the organization and some of the stuff that you guys do?
Sure, yeah, no problem. So first and foremost, we're a computational software company. What does that really mean? So what that means is that we're developing software applications and systems and support mechanisms for computationally challenging problems that we see in the typical, let's say, design flow space that we're engaged in with customers. So when we're engaged like that, we find that the computational challenge can become intractable with regular kind of techniques. So when we're developing our applications and our software, we need to come up with new and innovative mechanisms, algorithms, applications, tools, methodologies, and approaches to problems that previously just didn't really kind of exist or weren't addressable, okay, because they're part of the current design challenge.
Yeah.
And that ranges all the way from low-level chip design to the system development space. Right?
Wow. And Tim, I wonder, I know in Cadence you talk a lot about this idea of intelligent system design, right? And I know it's a lot of your focus at the moment. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I'm kind of fascinated in this space, I have to say. To me, from the kind of outside in, it feels even more sophisticated, if you don't mind me saying so, than rocket science. And I'm sure that's used often. I know in our previous conversations, I was, fascinated by the amount of problem solving that you guys do, the kind of projects that you get stuck into. So can you tell me a bit about that intelligent system design? It's something that I know really interested me.
Okay, so at the heart of EDA is tools, engineering tools to solve particular types of problems that are within a given part of the design flow. So that ranges all the way from front-end verification to digital back-end and everything else. So when we're in that space, when we bring those pieces together and we join them in a particular kind of way, what we get is an emergent property that's greater essentially than the sum of its parts. Okay. So we get additional things that we can do because of the let's say the connectedness and interconnectedness of the tools themselves.
Yeah.
Now this intelligent system design part really is let's say it's a push towards the integration of more sophistication and more intelligence into the tools so that we can design intelligent systems. And what that means is that we're building in artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques into our tools, as well as joining those together. So if you take any piece of silicon that you have in your life today, and that can be from the smartphone that's on your desk, your laptop, your TV, your car, your aeroplanes, and so on and so forth, there are hundreds of thousands of different devices out there. And our intelligent system design mechanism is enabling the development of those systems. So we're not developing them. Cadence isn't developing these systems. We are providing the mechanisms to enable our customers to develop them. And the intelligent system portion is the system that is developed by the customer. So our intelligent system design methodology is the application of our tools, algorithms, expertise, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and so on and so forth, in order to enable that to take place.
Wow. Okay. Thanks very much for that, Stephen. Stephen, just to kind of talk about yourself for a moment. I won't get too personal, don't worry, but I am kind of interested in how does Stephen Hollins end up working on this kind of leading edge, kind of central point, if you want to call it that, to all this kind of connected and technological revolution that's kind of going all around us. Tell us a bit about your career journey, both before Cadence and then, within Cadence, because I'm sure some of the people out there would be interested in that Cadence journey as well. As we see more and more of the work that you guys are doing out there.
Sure, yeah. So when I was studying, I started life in the kind of the electrical engineering space, and I found that I was much more drawn to light current engineering, so CMOS technology and the like.
Yeah.
Right? So in conjunction with that, I went on to study computer science, and I found that when we join the two together, you can do some quite cool things. So that's kind of how I started my journey in the technology space. And initially, I was involved in aerospace. And I actually worked with Cadence. So we were at the time deploying what is now commonplace technology, but at the time was very cutting edge. And this was synthesis technology in the ASIC design space. So traditionally, we'd been building hardware systems using traditional techniques. There wasn't a lot of EDA tooling in the flow. And I was working on what's known as a full authority digital engine control, which is the control that you would see a lot on the RB211 engines as part of the 747 aircraft.
Yeah.
So that control system required what is known as a full hardware in the loop simulation. So that required everything that we had, all of the horsepower computationally, all of the software we could write, all of the tools that we could buy, plus an engine emulator itself. So we put all of those together, and actually I worked with Cadence very, very closely during that time to build that mechanism. And so from that point, I developed a very keen interest in developing EDA type of tools. And at that point, I moved into Cadence for the first time. So that was kind of late 90s. And from there, in terms of the consulting work and development work that I did with customers, I moved on into wider industry, and I spent the last 20 years developing application tooling in a variety of spaces, but most specifically focused in the back end of chip design. So this means the part after synthesis, the physical implementation. So in the timing space, in the power space, in parasitic extraction. Yeah. This is generally termed kind of sign-off, digital sign-off. And that's the group that I'm part of now in Cadence. So I've been part of some very successful products. We've done some great technology. I'm now back in Cadence, and I'm competing against the technology that we created. So it's a little bit kind of ironic, but and I'm not actually working in those areas, but I'm now back in Cadence, and I'm in the digital systems group, and we have this big operation in Cork that we're setting up. So that's very exciting. And all of those kind of tooling areas that I've worked on over the last kind of 25 years or so, they're all part of that strategy. Yeah. So it kind of suits me extremely well. So that's kind of how I've ended up here.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah. I'm interested in that. You worked for, now you're a competitor for the interesting world that we live in. Steve, I'm really interested in, obviously we talk a lot, and we talk a lot about the future of work. We talk about meaningful work, right, being a really important thing as to why people, number one, join organizations and then stay in organizations. So I'm kind of interested in your view on some of the great things about working on the kind of projects that you work on, and also the variety of the projects that you work on, in terms of the kind of clients that you work. Could you give us a sense of, people on your team, they're working on lots of different stuff. What are some of the great things about that? What's the good stuff and the bad stuff maybe about that kind of work? Because that to me seems, you guys seem to be right at the core of leading edge, meaningful work, but that is good and bad, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So on the positive side, we see big trends early, right? So when we're working with leading customers, what we would see is, so customer A has some problem that they want to solve. We engage with them. We understand what the problem is, and we develop some thinking around that, and we interact and iterate and communicate with the customer on how to solve that problem. We might also see the same problem with customer B, and then we say, well, hold on a second. If we're in this particular problem space, doesn't it make sense to do something that's more broadly applicable and apply, let's say, a more holistic approach? Because typically, a customer, and you can take any large silicon customer that you like. I mean, it could be an Intel, a Samsung, a Broadcom, a Qualcomm, you name it, right? I mean, they all have a very kind of, let's say, specific set of requirements and a kind of a key set of tenets for their methodologies when they're developing silicon. So, and this is the kind of the negative part of it. So although we see the big picture and we see where the trend is and what we
Yeah.
should develop in order to address the industrial challenge. When we actually come to address it, because of these, let's say, esoteric approaches to silicon design, when we, let's say, put forward one solution, it might well be that just doesn't suit, 2 or 3 of the other folks that we're trying to satisfy. So then we have to start building. Well, okay, so maybe we need a kind of sort of some kind of conditional. If it's this flavor, then do that, and if it's that flavor, do this, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And that can lead to a large degree of complexity. And that is actually, if we look at historically, the challenges of working with EDA tools is that from a user perspective, I mean, there are lots and lots and lots of different options to those tools in order to get them to do the thing that you want to do. And that's where the skill of the design team comes in at the customer. So knowing how to drive the tools to get what they want. And in quite a lot of cases, we end up with some quite complex legacy software as well, because we have to support these things as we go forward for a number of years. And then when we come to obsolete them, there's always some additional problem with that, right? So we do tend to carry things for quite some time. So there are some disadvantages with that. But the great thing is when you go to a customer and they say, oh, well, we have this problem. And we say, oh yeah, well, we've seen this a couple of times, and here are a couple of approaches that we're thinking about. And then they present their thinking, and then you join all that together, and you're like, wow, that kind of really makes sense. And that's a big hitter item right there, and something to grow the market, right? Because that's what we're after at the end of the day. I mean, we're not in the business of producing EDA tools and system tools for the good of our health. It's because we want to be a successful company, and we want to help our customers be successful. So we're looking for the really kind of the big hitters and the big winners in those interactions.
Yeah, no, I understand. That's interesting, Steve. So a couple of things, jumping out at me. Look, you're a leader in your own right. You've been involved in a really interesting sector for kind of a long period of time. What are the kind of 2 or 3 things, I suppose, you've learned about leading this kind of, problem solving, shall we call them, teams, right? Because you are dealing with, as you said yourself, broad ranges of problems. You can be working on multiple challenges at any one time. So as a leader, what have you learned about kind of managing these kind of teams? Because I'm fascinated in that. You're right at the constantly problem solving or framing, or so what have you learned on that side of things?
So what I would say is that the business starts and ends with the customer. However, in our operation, the most important thing we have are our people. Okay, so the people are absolutely everything in terms of their skills, what they can put on the table, what they can bring to the organization and to the customer and everything else. So it's all about the people, and right at the heart of that is communication. So quite often people say to me, well, what technical skills should I be looking at? Technical skills are extremely important, but communication is actually central to everything that we do. Because if we can't communicate, then we can't collaborate well, and we can't innovate. We can innovate individually, but innovation at an individual level is not as powerful as innovation at a team level or at a corporate structure type of level, particularly where we have hugely complex projects that would have some kind of interdependency between them.
Yeah.
So if I was to sort of summarize it in a succinct way, what we're really kind of looking at are people, collaboration, communication, and innovation. They're the sort of the key things that we need.
Yeah.
Of course, people will have very, very deep skills in particular areas, and there is huge value in that for us as well. But if we have very, very complicated technology in a particular area, and nobody else in the team can understand it, and that can't be communicated well, how can we maintain that technology's value over time, and how can we develop it into something that is better than it is, right? So it can become problematic in that.
No, that's great. So actually very interesting, because I do think we have a tendency sometimes to, think about tech and the technical competencies, and sometimes you forget actually to make all of that work, you have to connect that kind of softer skills piece.
Yeah.
And look, obviously, lots happening, as you said yourself. R&D hub in Cork. I'm fascinated in what that's all going to be about. What kind of work is going to take place there. Can you tell us a little bit about that center in that beautiful part of the world? And kind of what you're trying to do there, the focus, and that kind of thing. And also, please feel free to talk even more about the kind of people that are working there at the moment or who want to work there. You can take it any way you want, but really interested in what you're hatching, shall we say, down there.
Right. Yeah. So we have pretty big plans for the site in Cork. We're in the initial phase right now, which is our kind of build up phase one, and we have a lovely office at Penrose Dock and right on the river. It's completely fitted out, totally finished now, despite the current situation that we're all very aware of, right? So in that office space, in this initial phase, we are first and foremost about the technology development. It has to be about the technology development and operational support and customer services. Okay, so we are doing application software development from a pure R&D perspective in the digital space, the space that I'm involved in. We also have a division in the mixed signal IC component, right? So this is where we're developing integrated blocks of analog type of circuitry into the digital space as well. Yeah. So there's a very successful product range that we have there that we're going to be developing out of Cork and establishing a center for there. We also have a very important group, which is known as World Field Operations. So these folks are working directly with customers and looking at the way that the products are working operationally on the ground in identifying kind of key issues that we would perhaps not in R&D as easily because we're not interacting as directly. And those folks are really sort of helping to evolve the products and to bring them up to speed for new standards as well. So we have something called functional safety. So in this world of autonomous driving and artificial intelligence and machine learning and all of that, we want to make sure that whatever silicon gets produced or manipulated out of our tools has some mechanisms such that if they're utilized in safety critical applications, that we have some graceful failure mode, or it's not just going to fail catastrophically. Yeah. Whereas previously we'd be perhaps looking to see, well, what's the absolute optimum implementation that we can make, from a logical circuit. And so we might be adding in more logic in order to make it safer, for example, and it might consume more power, and that hasn't been a goal of the past. But how to make the tools do that? That's a quite a big topic. So we have a group there. Yeah. And we also have global customer services, as well as other logistical things like license compliance. So we have quite a wide range of things, but that's not the full story. And the full story will evolve over time. Okay. So we're going to establish some marketing presence there. There's some discussions around e-commerce and things like that. So there are all sorts of opportunities in this melting pot. What I've just described is our kind of kickoff kernel, kernel of sort of technical work. And what we hope to do is to bring in some new technology fields. And actually, that is extremely connected to the academic side of things as well. So we're working very hard to establish a set of academic connections, particularly around the Cork area. So, for example, Tyndall Institute, University College Cork. I have very strong connections myself with UCD and Queen's University in Belfast, as well as universities abroad. So we're hoping to leverage that relationship and then kind of build out from that, and perhaps develop some new and key technologies from the centre there.
Right, thanks, Stephen. Sounds like an absolutely amazing thing to be involved in. And I know when we spoke about this earlier, you seem to be a serial site setter upper. It was the easiest phrase I could come up with. So I think I commend your bravery and your madness. I'm not exactly sure which one it is. So Stephen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at some of the comments here. So I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions, or that we can kind of take. We'll kind of look at them now. So Best interview technique I was given when interviewed as campus. Thank you, Orla. Just some comments here. Just wondering, guys, if there's any particular questions. Are there roles that can be worked on remotely? I'm in Galway. Work sounds very interesting as I'm in an R&D group. Stephen, interesting question. So, again, I think it's worth talking about that in the context of your new offices and how you guys work, perhaps.
Yeah. So, so we all know, understand, and acknowledge now that remote working is a very real possibility. We are all now working remotely. We're not quite sure how it will look globally in Cadence at the end of, when we get to the end of this thing. But for sure, there's going to be aspects of that, and I suspect there's going to be. I can't say for certain that about how it will be globally within Cadence. But certainly, so far as we're concerned, I'll go back to what I said earlier, which is that it's all about the people. So if you have the right skills, you're the right person, then we can find a way to make it work. Probably there's always going to be a need to meet colleagues in person and so on every now and again. And we do have some blended working proposals, let's put it that way. But we also have, as part of the pandemic, every single employee in Cadence now has a home office set up that has been part funded by the company, right? So we've paid in order to have that set up for folks. So it's going to be a very big picture, a very big part of the picture going forward.
Yeah, that's great. So I suppose I have a question myself, actually, just as I see someone coming in. I'm trying to kind of subsume them into one question. If you were to kind of talk about the culture in Cadence, 3-4 words, what would you kind of say about it? Because I think when I'm looking at the stream here, there's various bits and pieces coming in and around that broad area. So what are the kind of words you'd use to kind of highlight? And let's even talk particularly about that site in Cork, because it seems really exciting and multi-layered in terms of kind of stuff you're going to
do. Yeah. So just in the context of Cork, okay, so this is a new site and we're developing that site, and we've created what we call the site leadership team. So although I'm the site director, I'm not, dictate over everything that happens there, because there are lots of different groups and lots of different interests and everything else. So everybody has a seat at the table from all these different groups that I described previously. That's the first thing. So there's a lot of representation. Let's put it that way, of these different entities at the management level. So the culture that we want to embody is certainly one of collaboration and of good communication and of innovation, but it's also around things like community, right? Because we're part of the community there in Cork. There's a lot of kind of soft skill areas that we want to develop in terms of touching with the kind of the local area that we're in and helping where we can in some way those less privileged than ourselves. Of course, it's going to be inclusive, right? It's going to be diversified. We have a lot of people who've come from different countries, actually. So this is a good point to bring out here, is that in order to get us going in these kind of different technical areas, we're relocating some key seed talent from different parts of the world. So, they're coming from lots of different places. So it's going to be a highly diversified international group who are getting established there in Cork. And so we have to make sure that we mesh that well. So we can't have what we don't want is any kind of silos developing. So our methodology is to try and mix folks together, and of course we're together in our work, in our groups. But outside of that, there are lots and lots of things that we can do to engender, collaboration, communication, teamwork, inclusiveness, community, all of those other kinds of things. And all of that as well, of course, forms part of this kind of great place to work, where I'm very proud to say that we were placed sixth in our category for Cadence Island this year, which is a great achievement and a great endorsement of the team within Cadence Island. So I can tell you that my own experience coming back to Cadence after a long break away,
after leaving for the competitor,
it's been extremely positive, right? It's kind of when I came back to Cadence, I actually got a few emails, and some folks have been around, since I'd previously left,
Wow.
and they were like, "Oh, welcome home," right? I mean, it was kind
Yeah.
of, it was
Nice.
a really nice thing,
Yeah.
and it was great to see some old faces and everything else. And I really feel like the vibe in the company is it feels kind of a little bit kind of family oriented almost, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
a sort of a
Yeah.
sense around it. I mean, and yeah, I've really enjoyed getting, being part of that again, and getting to know all of the new folks as well, right?
Yeah. That's great. And I think it's a nice sense of the organ. And obviously, as somebody who's heading up to a future work institute, fascinating what you're kind of trying to build down there around family and community. We put this one up, Stephen, because you get enough compliments, but equally, I don't want to give you too much of an ego, in terms of on that. One is coming up here, which I think is a good question. Cadence within the EDA industry, are there any other industries that candidates might come from? And I know we talked about this before, Stephen,
Yeah.
around, what are these kind of hotspot areas that if people are thinking, oh, actually, Cadence is potential opportunity
Yeah.
for me here. It
Yeah.
might be. Can we
Yeah.
have a little bit of that conversation?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of the skills that we're looking for in the application development space, and in the WFO type of space, you don't necessarily have to have EDA experience in order to be able to work in this industry. And in fact, if that was one of our kind of key criteria, we'd have a really hard time hiring people, because there aren't too many EDA development engineers in Ireland and in Europe. And what we're doing here in Cork is it's probably the biggest effort in R&D for EDA outside of North America for many years.
Yeah.
So industries that would provide the skills that we will be looking for would be the silicon design industry, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, with some level of coding associated with that. We have industries that are, let's say, adjacent to ourselves in terms of computational complexity.
Yeah.
So that might be at an academic level. So we might have people working in high performance computing or distributed systems or research and development in computational fluid dynamics or medical research, genome processing, that type of thing.
Yeah.
We are interested in people with maths and physics backgrounds who can write code. We are interested in people who might have worked in, let's say, oil field research and things like that. Because think of any industry, the way to think of it generally is, think of any industry where there's a huge data set. Okay, so that's why I mentioned genome processing. That's why I mentioned oil field research. But there are lots of them, and big data is a big thing, right? Is a big thing right now.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, what we're about at the lowest level is writing really efficient algorithms over huge data sets in order to perform computations extremely efficiently and have those finished in a reasonable time frame in order for us to present a result. And that's going to be an ever increasing problem. So pick any industry you like. If it's a large data set, if it's let's say a highly multi-threaded or distributed type of computing environment, if it's related to silicon design, if there's some coding element to that, if you understand the methodologies of chip design and you can write code, and it doesn't necessarily have to be C++, which is our kind of core coding language. A lot of methodologies now are scripted in, customers are scripted in Python and SQL, things like that, right? SQL is something else that is used extensively throughout the industry. And so there are lots and lots of skills that are out there in different industries that we can leverage. So, if we're looking for somebody and we say, oh yeah, we want somebody to work in EDA in Clarity 3D solver, for example, right? So that solver uses finite element analysis at its heart. So the skills that are important there are being able to code in finite element analysis. It's not important that you understand what clarity is or how it works even. We can take care of all of that. Right?
No, so that's really interesting.
The core skills are important.
Yeah, no, very useful, Stephen. I think that's one of the things, that's really kind of floating around in my head. And I think just having direct experience so far with you guys over the last kind of period of time, definitely everything you're saying to me is ringing true, in terms of your culture and in terms of how you guys work. So lots of compliments coming in, Stephen. Again, I'm not going to read them out because, you know, it'll feel like a little bit like a radio show if I do that. But by and large, everybody's calling out, you know, lots of positive things, you know, in terms of the interview, in terms of some of your comments. I am amazed, everyone that's out there, about how calm Stephen is, because he's informed me he's just moved house. So I think it could be maybe a kind of a very calm exterior, but inside he's worrying about all the different things he needs to worry about in the new house over the next kind of period of time. So I think within that context, we'd say thank you very much to yourself, Stephen, for taking the time to interview us. I will have to say that Cadence, really exciting company. The more I've gotten to know about the guys, you know, the more I'm realizing what they're trying to build down there in Cork. You know, that kind of melting pot of innovation, problem solving, and inclusion. Really, really interesting place to be. So, Stephen, with that, I'll say thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. Yeah, very much appreciated. I'll say, guys, we will be making a recording of this available kind of on LinkedIn and on social. So, Stephen, thank you very much indeed. And guys, thank you very much for tuning in. And with that, we will leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye, folks. Cheers.